This coming Sunday is the 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Our passage comes from John's Gospel. It is one of the miracle stories of the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. It comes from John chapter 6, verses 1 through 15. Let's take a listen. Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs he was performing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish feast of Passover was near. When Jesus raised his eyes and saw that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" He said this to test him because he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 200 days' wages worth of food would not be enough for each of them to have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good are these for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people recline." Now there was a great deal of grass in that place, so the men reclined, about 5,000 in number. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed them to those who were reclining, and also as much of the fish as they wanted. When they had had their fill, he said to his disciples, "Gather the fragments left over, so that nothing will be wasted." So they collected them and filled 12 wicker baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves that had been more than they could eat. When the people saw the sign he had done, they said, "This is truly the prophet, the one who is to come into the world." Since Jesus knew that they were going to come and carry him off to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain alone. We know that larger and larger crowds were coming to hear Jesus speak. Many receive a miraculous cure from his hands. When Jesus sees the large crowd, his concern is immediately for them. How can we get enough food to feed them? Philip's response is a logical one. We simply don't have enough money. Andrew's response is to see what is available, the boy with the 5 loaves and 2 fish. Jesus then tells the disciples to have the people recline. What is it that he's asking them to do? He's asking them to take a seat on the ground, to stop whatever they may be doing. And he asks them to recline, which would have been a common posture for eating at that time, as if they were in a kind of lounge chair. In that position, we are ready to receive. In that position, we are ready to be fed by someone else. In that position, we are attentive to what another person is doing for us. Jesus is bringing about a crowd of attentive people, people who are hungry, people he wants to feed and will feed. He wants them to take in not just the food that he will give them, but what he is able to do and what he will do at the Last Supper. Notice what he does. He takes the loaves, gives thanks, and distributes them. When we celebrate Mass, the host, the bread, are brought to the altar. The priest gives thanks in the Eucharistic prayer, and then the Holy Communion is distributed. We do much the same thing that Jesus did in the Gospel today. The miracle of the feeding of the multitude appears in all 4 of the Gospels. It was an important episode in Jesus' life, and one that ultimately made sense for the people who followed Jesus when they heard about the Last Supper, when he celebrated that first Eucharist. How many of them, in receiving the Eucharist at one of those early church gatherings, would recall sitting on the ground, reclining, and then watching as Jesus performed that miracle of the multiplication of the loaves and the fish. The disciples, as well as the people in the crowd, must have been awestruck. This was something they had not seen before. This was someone unlike anyone they had ever met before. This would change their lives. The Eucharist we receive is meant to change our lives as well. Let the gospel fill your week. See you in church. For now, God bless.